Good morning. Welcome to Between Worlds. I'm Jennifer Kavanaugh, and today is April 3rd, 2021, Easter weekend. It's been an interesting weekend, especially if you live in Ontario, uh, like I do in Canada. And anyway, we're not going to talk about that today. I want to share with you a dream that I had last night and just an interesting stream of thought, which we'll come to in a second, that has arisen out of it. And unfortunately, I can't remember much of the details because immediately upon waking, my children started jumping directly on top on top of me. So the download didn't fully stick. But here's what I remember. So I was in this sort of like training slash work group with my dear friend Stacy, who some of you know if you have watched our Spiritual Rebel series on this channel. And we were in a group that was similar actually to the group that we had done our adventure with that we describe in those videos. Same energy, but it wasn't the same people, if that makes sense. And while we were in this kind of training, we were also in this like work study. It was like some kind of apprenticeship type idea. And there was one thing that was very clear: don't question anything. You weren't allowed to ask questions. You just do as you're told, and you follow what you're asked to do. No questions asked. And at first we were trying to do our thing, and then of course we both we both start having questions. So anyway, we didn't quite realize, similar to our real life experience, that we were both questioning things until we ended up back in the office. So we had been out on some adventure, which I can't recall, with these individuals. And then when we came back into the office, we realized that we were both questioning. And while we were there in the office building, which was actually a specific office building that I used to work in Toronto, but we'll save the name for it today. Um, and we noticed that there was this like inspection committee that was coming in. So there was these committees that were going around to different organizations, and what they were doing was investigating corruption. And we knew that we had some information to share with this group, but we had no proof of anything. We just had our gut feel. Very similar to our real life. So we were ended up being called in with this committee to provide our own statement, testimony type scenario, and we couldn't really say a whole lot because we couldn't back anything up. So anyway, we were back in her office, and I decided to go step out for some air. And I go outside, and I'm in the forest suddenly. And while I'm outside, I end up pulling this long hose. So I had this like little round disc, and I saw there was an image of one of the people on this disc, and I thought, well, this is interesting. And as I was playing with it, this long like hose came out through the forest, and it was like kind of like a fire hose idea, and I was stretching it out, and there was people walking by, and I was like, oh geez, I hope they don't see what I'm looking at, because I was trying to figure out what it was, but I knew it was potentially not dangerous, but it could get you in trouble, I guess you could say. And so once the people pass and the hose is unrolled, this disc starts playing a video of one of the men that's in the group. And basically, it's like a full confession of their involvement in the corruption. And I immediately run back in to the office building. And as I run inside, I'm carrying this casserole dish that's full of water. And Stacy sees me run by, and she runs with me, and we go into the boardroom where this committee is. And I said, I have it. I have it all. And I put the casserole dish down, and I start filtering the water out. And I say, it's all right here in the water. It's all been recorded in the water. You just have to look. I've got it all. And then I woke up. And so when I woke up, I was trying desperately, despite the jumping, to stay in that dream state, because there's this really special period upon waking where I find I can engage with some of those other dimensional consciousness, we'll say, and get some more intel, some more answers around it. So as I sat with this concept, um, I kept hearing, keep your eyes on the water, look to the water. You know, we've heard this quite a few times, look to the water, it's in the water. And water has always been a big element in my journey. And so here's a couple of things that have come up. So the first thing that I was guided to do is they said, look at where you unrolled that cord. And I was like, what is the symbolism of the cord? Because we have energetic cording where we might be corded to people, we might be giving or taking energy from people and so forth. And they said, but there's an element of that hose being in nature. There's a key element there that it had to be out in nature. And they said, think of that water not as a hose, but as a stream. Okay. So we now have a stream of water that is holding data, right? And so they gave me this really, and you can interpret who they is, really interesting question, seed will say, of what if the water is each drop of water would be similar to like a USB key, where the water is actually holding or recording data. And I was specifically given the word record, that water records. And then, of course, my next question is, well, I mean, that doesn't really make sense logically, because if you think about the water cycle, water evaporates, it goes up to the clouds, you know, it recycles. So how could it record? Because where would that data go? It's not going anywhere. So what would be the purpose of it? And then the next question that popped into my mind is, what if our view of water being recycled is false? What if water isn't recycled? What if that whole method that we have been taught is an illusion? And I was given this image of water droplets being created inside the earth, inner earth, and coming up through the streams, collecting all the data, and then going back down into like a data warehouse. And then I heard as well, think about water. Think about where water lies. Water is moving through pretty much anywhere where humans exist, right? And then think about how much water we have in our own bodies. And that same, you know, system could be recreated in our own bodies. Think about it. We take water into our bodies, we record on that water, we excrete that water, which then goes back into the larger system and could potentially move back into these data stores. But then even if we go back to the original water cycle, I was also planted the seed or the question of, well, what if that data is actually being used? What if when the water evaporates, that is like an upload of the data into, you could say, like Akashic records or some other space? I mean, we don't really know what's going on with all these other dimensions anymore. So I think it's there's some value in exploring some of these new ways of thinking, even though they may not make sense to us in the 3D. Perhaps there are some pieces. And the only reason I'm sharing this crazy thought today is because I have this feeling that there is someone out there who is watching this who has the other piece of this puzzle. And if we can start to share these ideas, maybe these puzzle pieces can come together. So there's this idea that water is recording. So if we take that a little bit further and we look at some of the research that has been done on crystallization of water, right? And how water can form these beautiful, intricate snowflakes and crystals and so forth, depending on the energy that they have been around, right? And I think sometimes in our culture, we have this way of dissociating beauty and function. So if something is really beautiful, it's a piece of art, it's meant to just hang on a wall, it doesn't really have a function in our world. But what if that is an illusion? What if the more beautiful and intricate that these crystallizations are from our water, the more functional it is? What if those crystals actually represent data that can be activated, unlocked? I don't know. I don't know the whole key here. I just have a piece of it, right? So it's got me questioning, you know, if we can influence water, which some of the research out there suggests that we can, then it's also possible, you know, there's studies that we can charge water, we can activate water. So is it not possible that that water could not store data, right? And And what's interesting is, as I was in this space before I was falling asleep last evening, I was really heavy in the consciousness of rocks, right? And exploring and the heaviness, the denseness of that. So it's interesting that moved into the water element in the early morning, because one of the ways that rocks are softened is water, right? And this idea that one is more powerful than the other, maybe not so, because if you have a rock that's been, washed over by a stream over and over again, that rock can wear down as well. And I think there is consciousness existing in all of those areas. So the water, I was trying to tap into the consciousness of water, and it's something that I've done the last couple of days as well, just with our own stream here of water. And the message that I receive back from water is that they're always recording. It's always recording the surroundings. So even if we're not ingesting the water, even if we're not intentionally influencing or programming or whatever word you want to use with the water, there is still this recording action that is going on. And living in the forest, I'll often stop and talk with the trees as well, and say, you guys have been here forever. You've been here way longer than I have anyhow. And I know you know a lot more of the history of what's actually happened in these particular spots. And what if there's an element to the water doing the same thing? I don't know. I'm curious what your thoughts are. And this just kept going. So when we looked at this long hose, which I was told represented a stream of water, and as I'm pushed into considering that water is recording information, they said, think about water recording thought. And then think of that phrase, stream of thought, right? I have a thought stream. I have a stream of thought. So there's this concept that when we have these smaller streams of water, as opposed to an ocean of water, that we can really start to find this niche information. We can start to parse out the information. And I can't help but wonder, if we were to get to the individual droplets, I keep being given this image of a USB key, that perhaps they hold some information there. And then you look out into the world and you look out into some of the happenings in the water these days. And I know in meditations past, there's a lot of things under the water, inside the water. So the final bit, if you're still following this chaotic thought this morning, is when we look at if water, and I think water's on our side, if water is our recording mechanism and water is always listening, how would that liken to the nefarious side of things, to their technology, right? And think about phones, computers. They're always watching, they're always recording. Most of us know this now. But what is the one thing that will completely destroy that technology so it can no longer record? Water. You drop a phone in water, it's gone. It's done. You can try and get it in some rice. Maybe you'll be lucky, you'll get some of the data back. But water, to me, has always been a really powerful antidote to the AI and to some of this nefarious tech-related streams of thought. So I wonder if, this scenario that we're living through right now of lacking privacy, of not having the space to do the things we want to do, of constantly feeling watched, and all the emotions that are being transferred through those energies. I wonder if there's an antidote for us in the water. So anyway, that's my stream of chaotic craziness between worlds, of woo-woo-ness for this Saturday morning. But I would be really interested to see if anybody else has had some interesting thoughts around water and how we could use water as an antidote, or perhaps even as a recording device. It might be interesting for us to take some time and do some meditations with just a small cup of water, or a small stream, or a small little puddle, and see if you can communicate with the consciousness of it see if there's any information there that you can gather, and maybe we can start putting some more pieces of the puzzle together. So much love to you all. Promise you, it was just a dream, nothing else. I'm not doing anything else crazy over here. And we will chat with you all soon. Have a lovely weekend.